Monday scores on Sunday, and the rider says Falcons striker backs brace in Tenerife, win over Atletico Feminine. And another rider says Akun hits double, Aina also on target. This is our big news on the Punch Sports Extra. Good morning, my lovely people. Thank you so much for always clicking on my videos to watch. I sincerely appreciate you all. And today being the 6th day of November 2023, I'll be sharing with you the headlines from the Punch Sports Extra and also the headlines from the Punch newspaper. These are the two papers I have here with me. I'm a lover of sport, football to be precise. I'm a Man U fan, though I am not consistent with watching sports games. But I have two papers with me, and I felt it is very important to share with you. But I will begin with the Punch newspaper itself, and our big news here is 220 police patrol vehicles deployed in Imo, Kogi, Bayelsa, and the rider says IG to complete deployment Friday to redeploy Imo CP before poll. And another rider says Egbetukun bars VIP escorts, others personnel to cope vote buying violence. And that story is on page 2 of the Punch newspaper this morning, and that is off-season governors polls. We just pray for a peaceful election in these states. Again, we have another story here which says Niger, Benue, Kanu marketers hike fuel, blame transportation cost, and that story is on page 22. It is well. Again, we have another story here which says cooking gas scarcity hits Lagos, Katsina, others. That story is on page 31 of the Punch newspaper. Again, we have another story here which says collecting pension unlawful. Falana tells Akpabio, others. That story is on page 45 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Again, we have another story here which says commanders, others killed as military bombards territories. That story is on page 45 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Again, we have another story here which says details of 70 covered corpses with police. Says Abia. That story is on page 8 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And we have another story here which says Israel gives condition for ceasefire. Death hits 11,000. The story is on page 7 of the Punch newspaper, and that is a sad one. I just hope peace will be restored in these countries. Again, we have another story here which says trafficker excrete 86 heroin wraps. NDLEA seizes 14.4 opioids. That story is on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Again, we have another story here which says Lautech students sue Makinde for relocating agri faculty. This is serious. This student have mind. And that story is on page 7 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And back to our Punch Sport Extra. We have another story here which says NPFL Rangers Doma triumph in thrilling derbies. That story is on page 7 of the Punch Sport Extra. Again, we have another story here which says Simeon signed new Atletico deal. That story is on page 3 of the Punch Sport Extra. Again, we have another story here which said VAR decision embarrassing, says Atita. That story is on page 4. Again, we have another story here which says Adesanya worry of judges. That story is still on the page 2 of the Punch Sport Extra. And then we have another story here which says Yen wants Joshua Fury fight. That story is on page 2. Again, we have another story here which says Milan miss Chukwueze against on the knees. That story is on page 3 of the Punch Sports Extra. Again, we have another story here which says World Cup qualifiers. Pasiano get Owoniyi boots. That story is on page 7. We have another story here which says Tottenham vs Chelsea. Shaki Blues face inform Spurs in London derby. That story is on page 8 of the Punch Sport Extra. And again, we have another story here which says Amusan inspire young athletes. That story is on page 2 of the Punch Sport Extra. Again, we have another story here which says Trouble Diaz rescues point for Reds. That story is on page 4 of the Punch Sports Extra. And these are the headlines we have today, my lovely people, from the Punch newspaper and the Punch Sports Extra. And I felt it is very, very important to share with you as usual, so that we can know what is happening in our dear country, Nigeria, and in sports generally. Thank you so much.